Today we come to our final week in a series that we've titled Date Night. And our idea in this series has been to invite couples, to invite husbands and wives, or engaged couples, for example, to come together over a dinner date and to have some critical conversations about marriage. We've talked about having a date night to talk about trust, about commitment, about intimacy, a date night to talk about our faith. And today we have two more date nights, and I want to start with this one. We want to challenge you to go on a date night to talk about finances, to talk about money. And you think, this is the worst idea ever. That does not sound very romantic or exciting. But I would say, no, it may be the best night that you've had in a long time as a couple. They say when you get married, the honeymoon lasts 12 to 18 months. At about 12 to 18 months, then you start to see the real person come out and you start to have conflict. In Song of Songs that we've been going through, turn to chapter 5 with me, and we see the first conflict that this young couple has together. And I'll pick up in verse 2. I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking, the bride says. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one, he says. And then she answers, my head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night. I've taken off my robe. Must I put it on again? I wash my feet. Must I soil them again? She's saying, I'm already in bed. Why are you bugging me? Why are you knocking at the door? And then she says, my beloved thrust his hand through the latch opening. My heart began to pound for him. I arose to open for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was mad, it sounds like, and he's gone. My heart sank at his departure. I looked for him, but I could not find him. I called for him, but he did not answer. So this is their first conflict that they have. Do you know what the number one cause of conflict is in marriages, and especially in new marriages? The number one conflict and the number one thing that couples argue about is about finances. And that's why we want to encourage you to have a date night to talk about these things. I know that one of the first things that young married couples argue about is finances because it happened when Veronica and I first got married. We'd been married like less than 2 weeks, and she tells me, she says, hey, I'm going to go grocery shopping. And I said, all right, great. I said, you've got $25, all right? So I mean, a week's, she said, I can't buy a week's groceries with $25. And the thing is, we're on a tight budget. I tried to tell her I was making $14,000 a year as a youth pastor, and she maybe made a little bit more as a kindergarten teacher. And she said, there's no way I can do $25 for a week's worth of groceries. I said, I'll come with you and show you. And the thing is, I had no idea what I was talking about because I'd literally gone from my college dorm room to the wedding chapel. I'd only eaten in the school cafeteria up until the day I got married. So I went to Albertsons with her, and as she would put things in the cart, I would take them out and say, we don't need bacon. Who needs bacon? And who needs hamburger meat? You know, that's why they call it a hamburger helper. We'll just have that. And anyway, so by the end, we had like barely any groceries at the bottom of the cart, and they ring it up as like cereal and pasta. That's about all we had. And we get back to the apartment, and I said, listen, next time you just go shopping without me. Whatever you think you need to spend. Because that was a painful experience, and I was absolutely useless. But my point is that money is the number one issue that couples have conflict over. And so this is why we want to encourage you, take an evening and talk about what is our view on finances. How do we want to handle them? How do we want to live generously? How do we want to tithe? Why do couples argue so much about finances? There's one main reason, and it's debt. And I have this on the screen. Debt is crippling marriages across our country. Do you know that 61% of couples, almost two-thirds of all couples that get married in our country get married with debt? And couples who argue about debt and have disagreements about debt, on average, carry $30,000 in consumer debt. And studies have shown that the higher their debt, the more they argue about finances. So debt is crippling marriages, but you can change that. And of couples who argue about debt, almost half of those hide purchases from their spouse? Oh, this is rhetorical, so don't raise your hand. But how many of you have hid purchases in secret from your spouse because we're not on the same page? And so our challenge is to have a date night to talk about finances and talk about what you want God to do with your finances. And I'll say this morning, if you're carrying consumer debt, then it's even more important that you get together and talk about how do we eliminate this. And so many married couples today carry consumer debt. We offer Financial Peace University here. This is Dave Ramsey's course. We offer it every semester. Sign up for that. If you're carrying debt, go after the smallest debt first, the smallest card. Pay it off. Celebrate that. I have this on the screen. When a husband and wife can eliminate debt, a shift happens in their marriage. They experience a peace like they've never had before. And here's the thing. Healthy money conversations lead to healthy marriages. It's that simple. When we start talking about our financial issues and get on the same page, our marriages become more healthy. Talking about money, as rudimentary as it sounds, as crass as it sounds, talking about money may be the most valuable thing that you do for your marriage. It's more valuable than the money itself is to talk about it and to come to agreement on it. Couples in financially healthy marriages, do you know what they talk about instead of arguing about debt? They start talking about their financial goals and their financial dreams and how they can live more generously. If you go on this date to talk about finances, I have some questions on the screen because much of the way we handle money, we learn from our own parents. So have you as a couple even had the conversation? How did your family handle money growing up? Maybe some of the ways your parents handled money was healthy. Maybe some of the ways they handled money was unhealthy. For example, I have here, what were your parents' attitude towards money? Was debt an issue in your home growing up? Did your parents save and invest? What did you learn about money from your parents? What is your most painful money memory? What is your happiest or your best money memory? Were your parents generous? Was tithing of value in your home? And so I challenge you to have this conversation, talk about those things. And here's a takeaway. If you're taking something away from this part, we're going to cover 2 dates today. But if there's a takeaway for you, it's this challenge. To make generosity and giving a core part, a central part of your marriage. In Luke chapter 12, Jesus says this. He has words about generosity. He says, give to those in need. I love that. Live generously. This will store up treasure for you in heaven, and the purses of heaven never get old or develop holes. Your treasure will be safe, and no thief can steal it, no moth can destroy it, because wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. And Jesus is saying that money is a heart issue. And so my challenge, the challenge is for you as a family to start forming new values, maybe values you haven't had before. I have some of them on the screen here. Could you as a couple talk about these things and form values for your family around the idea of embracing simplicity? We live in a country, let's be honest, where we all have more than enough. So can you teach your kids to live simply? Can you practice contentment? Sometimes we want more just because we can, and can you be content with what you already have? And then can you as a family decide to live generously? I think when we start to live that way, it changes the relationship. It changes the entire dynamic of our family. Finally, I have some questions for you to chew on. By the way, there's a pun there. This is over dinner, financial questions to chew on. Thank you. That took some time to come up with that. All right. 1, what are our financial goals? Have you even talked about that? What are our views on debt? How can we live more generously? What is our commitment to tithing? What do we want our children to know about our finances and our possessions? For example, do your kids in your home view your possessions as first belonging to God before they belong to you and to your own family? Do you talk about tithing with your children? Tithing, by the way, is simply the Greek word for 10%. It's a tenth. It comes from the Hebrew, a tenth of what you own. Tithing is a way to say that I trust God with what I have. Tithing makes us, I think, more aware of the needs of others around us. When tithing becomes a habit in your home, you start to live more generously across the board. I think there are people who go to church for a long time who don't tithe, who think, well, I can't afford to right now. Or there are a lot of people that go to church that think, well, I'll tithe when I get out of debt. Can I tell you what I've seen over my 30-something years of being a pastor? That day will never come. I'm going to be honest with you. It never comes. Do you know when tithing starts in the life of a couple, of an individual, of a person who's committed to God? It starts now. No matter where you are financially, you start tithing. You start giving to God first, not last. And maybe the Grove is your home, and maybe you've been here for 5 years or even 10 years, and you've been thinking, well, one day I'll start tithing when I have enough. And I'll just say, then that perspective is wrong. Then you're expecting everyone else in the room to meet the needs of your church, and it's just not fair. It's just not equitable. For example, Paul Gunther and I were in Haiti right after the earthquake there, and we're up on the mountain called Bellevue Montagne. And in the community, we ran into a couple of Catholic missionaries, and they were so proud to show us some of the houses they had rebuilt. And then they said, let us show you the road we just built up the mountain, on this side of the mountain, down to the community below. And they're showing us the road. We walked down to it, and they said, we built the road by hand. I said, without a bulldozer? And they said, no. I said, how did you do that? And they said, we pulled the community together. And we said, if everyone here brings a rake and a shovel and a wheelbarrow, we'll have enough people to do this. But if some of you stay home and just wait for the others to do it, this road will never get done. Because everyone's going to benefit from this road, so we need everyone to participate. They said, everybody came out from the community and was a part of building the road because it benefited everyone. It's the same with your church. There's so many good things that God is doing here, hopefully in your life, in the lives of your children. And so if this is your home, then tithe. This is where God put you to give first. So I want to give you that challenge today. In Luke, Jesus ties this idea of generosity to our hearts. He says, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. Tithing isn't so much a money issue, it's a heart issue. And if you want God to bless your marriage and to bless your finances, it starts by tithing. And so that's my takeaway, that's my challenge as we start this conversation today on finances on your date night. All right, so I said we had 2 dates we're going to talk about today. The first is the money talk. The second one is to talk about family. So I want to invite Veronica to come up, my wife. Can we give Veronica a welcome today to be a part of our conversation?
Thank you for having me up here. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
So our idea here is that hopefully you can take a night as a couple to sit down and say, what do we want the values of our family to be? What do we want the future of our family to be? What kind of legacy do we want to leave through our children? So Veronica, if a couple goes out and they have a date night to talk about family, where do you suggest they start?
Okay, well, if you're newly married or you're an engaged couple, I would just encourage you to start talking about how big you want your family to be. Do you want kids? How many kids do you want? Because you can't change your mind after you're married. You can't change your spouse's mind about that.
You could, maybe.
For example, like Palmer and I were on the same page, thank goodness, because we're both from very large families. He had 7 in his family. We had 6 in my family, 6 brothers and sisters growing up. So we both already knew we wanted a large family. I also was blessed to have foster brothers and sisters when I was growing up. And a lot of you might want to be foster parents or adopt. We have some amazing families in our church here that have adopted as well. So family can look different, so it's good to talk about that ahead of time with your spouse. And also talk about how long you want to wait before you have kids. We were young when we started out. I was 20, Palmer was 21. We were still in college and had a few years to go. So we decided on 5 years. I'm not sure why we picked 5 years. It sounded like a good round number. But we wanted time to finish college and to go out on the mission field for a couple of years together before we had kids, and we did that. Then at right about year 4, we said, well, we'll start trying, and then we found out we had some infertility issues that we had to deal with, and God gave me a verse that is more like a promise during that time from Psalm 127, 3-5. Don't you see that children are God's best gift, the fruit of the womb, his generous legacy? Like a warrior's fistful of arrows are the children of a vigorous youth. Oh, how blessed are you parents when your quiver is full of children. And I realized at that point that it's not us, that we're not in charge of how many kids we're going to have or if we're going to have kids, that God is in control. And then probably like a year after that, right around year 5, our oldest son, Byron, was born a week after our 5th anniversary. So how do you like God's timing on that? We went on to have 3 more sons, so we had a total of 4 sons. And I'm not going to lie, I really wanted a girl in the mix somewhere. I was hoping.
Our 3rd son didn't even have a name when he was born because you only had girl names.
Yes. So, but you know what? God is good. And for all you boy moms out there, I just want to give you a word of encouragement. Now I have 2 daughters. 2 of my sons got married, so I have a daughter, Morgan, and a daughter, Christine. And bonus, we have 2 granddaughters that are amazing, Chloe and Haley.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And we're very blessed. So we're giving this challenge to you to go out on a date night and talk about ideas. And Veronica and I wanted to share a few things that we've learned over the years. But I want to preface it by saying we are by no means perfect parents. We have made a lot of mistakes. We have. I wish I had done a few things differently. But God has taught us some things that we wanted to share with you. And one of them is to make faith a priority for your family. And I wonder, have you as a married couple ever seriously sat down and said, is faith the center of our marriage? How do we make our faith a center of our family? Because it won't happen by accident. Veronica, what are some of the ways that we try to make faith the center of our home?
Well, I would say just to be consistent. That's the key when your kids are real young. Just start off every night. Make it a habit to gather together before they go to bed and pray with them every single night. And we also took time every night to read the Bible with them and tell Bible stories. Palmer obviously is a great storyteller, and he would climb in their bottom bunk with them, and they'd pile around, and he could just make a story come alive from the Bible, and they would be laughing and having a great time. So that is something that I would say is important, as well as a second priority in our family was as they became teenagers. Some of you in the room have like preteens or teenagers, and we found that to have them join the youth group and make it a habit was super important because it's a time when maybe they won't be listening to you as much, but they will listen to a youth leader, and they're surrounded by kids in the youth group as well that they become friends with. We have some great programs here at the Grove. We have Zone for 5th and 6th grade, junior high ministry, high school ministry with great leaders and great pastors who want to mentor your kids and speak into their lives.
Yeah, and it's something that we had to make a priority and be intentional about, because even pastors' kids resist going on a Wednesday night or on a Sunday. We also made worshiping as a family a priority for us. We always came together. My family growing up, we had a tradition of going out to eat together at lunch somewhere, and so we started doing that as a family. 98% of the time we're at Payway, but that's just because we like Chinese. But one of the things we came up against that a lot of, I think, our Chandler, Gilbert, East Valley families come up against are sports on Sunday, I'll be honest with you. And so as our kids started to play soccer, there would be tournaments, for example, on Sundays. And finally, after a lot of conflict of are we going to church or they're going to be at soccer, we finally said, no, as a family, we're going to church together. And so we told their coaches, if you have matches on Sunday, your best player won't be there. At least in their father's mind, their best player wouldn't be there. But honestly, some of the coaches were able to give us more matches on Fridays and Saturdays, and the kids quit arguing about whether they're going to be at church or not because that was a priority. I have on the screen a verse that we've made kind of a core verse for us as parents. Write these commands that I give you today, God says, on your hearts. Get them inside of you. And then get them inside of your children. Talk about them wherever you are, sitting at home or walking on the streets. Talk about them from the time you get up in the morning to when you fall in bed at night. Tie them on your hands and foreheads as a reminder. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your homes and on your city gates.
Our second challenge for you on your date night about family is to talk about how you will grow virtue and build character in your children's lives. One of the very first books I bought as a young mom back in the mid-90s was the Children's Book of Virtues, which is a collection of stories and poems that teach kids at a young age about having moral values. It's not something that's going to just automatically happen. It's something that we have to be intentional about teaching them. Things like perseverance, hard work, compassion, and friendship. And every story just really helps you open up communication with your kids about these values. One, for example, that we really liked when they were little was called Why Frog and Snake Never Play Together. And it's an African folktale that makes us think about how much companionship and friendship we miss out on because someone told us that we can't play with someone because maybe they don't look like us or act like us. So in this story, Frog and Snake are really different. So their parents, when they find out they had played together, told them, you can't play with him. He's dangerous, or he doesn't look like you. So this is the perfect way to open up a conversation with your kids about who are your friends and who are you going to be friends with. And they don't have to look just like you. They can look different than you.
I love that. And one of the things I want to remind all of our parents here this morning is that character doesn't happen by itself. You model it. They see it in your life. I have a good friend who's a strength and conditioning coach, Coach Lott, and we were having this conversation about character at his house one day, and because he would drill these kinds of things into his kids, I loved it. He's from Texas. He's a good Texan. And he turns to his son, Jasper, who's like 10 years old, and he said, Jasper, what's the only thing you have in life? And Jasper says, your name and your word, Dad. And Jasper's playing O-line for TCU right now, by the way. But he drilled that into them. And sometimes we wait for someone else to grow character in our kids. Maybe it will happen that way. Maybe they'll have a great godly teacher. Maybe they'll have a great godly coach like Coach Lott or Coach Jones. My kids had 3 of my sons played football for Coach Jones at Perry High. They learned character from Coach Jones. But if your sons or daughters don't play for Coach Jones or Coach Lott, you need help. That's what I'm saying. And you are the one that instills these values in them. Veronica, how is character, you think, important in our home? How did our kids see that come out?
Well, Christian character is something that you have to be intentional about. And you have to model because your kids are watching your every move. And you'll have lots of moments like every day to teach them a lesson about character. I remember a time when my 2 oldest sons were just preschoolers, and we lived in Wheaton, Illinois at the time. And we were on our way to the campus bookstore. I was checking out, buying a few things, and as usual, the candy was right at their eye level. And I didn't notice, but as we were walking home, one of my sons, who I won't mention any names, but he's a youth pastor now, and he's not in this service, so don't tell him I told you. But he pulled out a Reese's peanut butter cup out of his pocket, and he was probably only 3 or 4, and he held it up, and he just smiled at me, and waiting for my reaction about what he had done. And I didn't get mad, but I just said to him, hey, buddy, we didn't pay for this. You took this, and we're going to have to take it back, and you're going to have to tell the cashier that you're sorry. So we made that walk of shame back to Wheaton College and did that. Another opportunity that you will have to build character in your kids is teaching them perseverance, hard work, and tenacity, which is something that, as you know, if you have kids, it doesn't come naturally for your kids to work hard and have perseverance. One of my sons, who was in 5th grade at the time, he decided that he wanted to join the band at school. And I was excited because at that point we hadn't really had any musicians in the family. So he got to choose his instrument, and he decided to choose the cello, which I was like, yes, I love the cello. We had Zach on stage today playing with the band, and it's just such a beautiful instrument. I love the sound of it. However, he didn't realize when he chose that how big it was to haul back and forth every single night on his bike.
Bicycle, yeah.
Yeah, he rode a bike to school. So he would put it on his back and try to balance without crashing all the way home. And the first couple weeks, he brought it home, and I just would sit back on the couch and just soak in that music every day. I loved it. But then after a few weeks, I noticed he stopped bringing it home. And I was like, Christian, where's your cello? Oops, sorry, Christian. I'm not doing very good today on the anonymity. And he said, Mom, it's just so heavy, and I don't want to bring it home. But then his teacher said, you're first chair right now in the band, and if you don't practice, you're not going to be first chair anymore. So he came home and he said, I just want to quit. I don't want to be carrying this home every day. And I said, I'm sorry, but in our family, Chinchens don't quit. You are not allowed to quit this. So you have to at least get through the semester and finish playing the cello. And he did, and he finished out the semester.
And now he plays for the New York Philharmonic, which is, no, all right, just kidding. I think he chose a flute or something next. That would fit in his pocket after that. We have on the screen here some words of character. Maybe if you're thinking, what does this mean? Honesty, faith, courage, kindness, helping, integrity, perseverance, humility, prayer, generosity, forgiving, compassion, friendship, and that list could go on. The Bible has a lot to say about building character. I love this verse in Proverbs chapter 22. Start children off in the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. All right, what's our last suggestion for a topic of conversation on family night?
All right, so on your date night with your spouse, a good thing you can talk about, this is kind of fun, is building memories or traditions and growing a spiritual legacy together as a family. The Bible encourages us to grow a family legacy. In Psalm 112, 1 through 2, we read, Praise the Lord, how joyful are those who fear the Lord and delight in obeying his commands. Their children will be successful everywhere. An entire generation of godly people will be blessed. We start our traditions. Sometimes we carry one over from when we grew up, but the fun part is when you're a new family and you get to start your own traditions. Palmer and I should have gone on a date night before our first holiday with our kids when they were little, but we didn't. We didn't talk about it ahead of time, and we had a problem. What happened was it was Easter, and I went out and I bought all the baskets. I bought some toys, some chocolate bunnies, all the fun stuff, set it all out
Eggs, a lot of eggs.
on the table. And Easter morning, I said, hey, boys, come downstairs. I want to show you something. They came down. They saw all the fun stuff on the table. They were so excited. And I said, look what the Easter bunny brought you. Well, that didn't go over too well with Palmer. He didn't grow up with his parents talking about the Easter bunny or any of the eggs or any of that fun stuff. And so he said, the Easter bunny did not bring that stuff. Your mom and dad bought it for you. So I was pretty ticked at that point.
And I said something like, Easter's about Jesus.
Yeah.
Which wasn't yeah.
So we did a conversation later to talk about how we were going to celebrate Easter in the future after I calmed down a little bit. And we decided to compromise, and because I wanted it to be fun too. Of course, I want it to be about Jesus, but also it's fun to do all of the other stuff too. So from then on, Saturday was our day to color eggs, hide eggs, and all the fun stuff. And then Sunday's fun too. And we would come to church and we'd learn about Jesus. And we also started our Easter walk, which is also a great fun way for your kids to learn about Jesus and have fun at the same time.
Some of our favorite, for me, family memories and traditions are around Christmas. Maybe it's like that for you. And one tradition we started when we first moved to Chandler that still continues now is that our first year here, we wanted to buy a Christmas tree, and we had heard there's a forest in Chandler, so we drove down to this forest in Chandler called the Home Depot Garden Center, and we bought a Christmas tree, and we tied it on the roof, and then we went across the parking lot, and the boys all wanted to go to Denny's. So we went to Denny's, but they said, Dad, park by the window. Some filthy animal is going to try to steal our tree. And so we would go in and order Grand Slams and make sure we could see the tree from inside of Denny's. And that's our family tradition. We still do it now. It's Lowe's, but the tradition's pretty much the same. But I want to remind you, mothers and fathers, you're growing traditions. You're building a legacy right now. You're shaping their hearts with the things that you value as a family. One of the things that I love that the Grove does is that we have so many opportunities for you as a family with your kids to serve God together. Every month you can serve with Live Love as a family in downtown Chandler. We now have started a family trip to Mexico where you can go and serve as a family. And for years, we've been encouraging families to go to Malawi together and serve God there. We got to go as a family on one of our Grove missions trips to Malawi, and you don't know what your kids are picking up or learning, but I loved how the last time we were there when our kids were younger together, all of us went, and on the last day of the trip, and our kids had been in the village handing out mosquito nets, helping with the VBS, playing soccer with the kids, but on the last day we're there, I was heading back to the village, and the kids weren't coming with me, but my youngest son runs up. He was in 6th grade at the time, and he hands me his shoes, and he said, would you find a kid in the village who needs these? And I share that just to say that the things that you value, the traditions you start, you are growing not just memories, but you're building a godly spiritual legacy leaving that in the lives of your family. All right, so we have some conversation questions to end with here for your date night on family. Veronica, you want to share these?
Okay, these are suggestions for building a spiritual legacy in your family. Number 1, create family traditions. 2, serve God as a family, as Palmer just said. Number 3, establish your family purpose and mission. Number 4, make your home a place where everyone is welcome, wanted, and loved. And finally, number 5, put God at the center of your family.
All right, everyone, could I ask you to bow your heads? I'd like to end our time together by praying over our families here at the Grove. If your spouse is sitting next to you, grab her hand or his hand, and let me ask for God's blessing on our marriages and families here. God, thank you for the gift of a spouse. Thank you for the gift of sons and daughters. Thank you for the blessing of families. And today we come to you together, God, at the Grove to say, would you, with your great hand, would you bless the homes of our families here today? May you fill our homes here at the Grove with your kind of love. May you fill our homes with words of peace and kindness. May you fill our homes with marriages where we see husbands and wives support and encourage each other. God, may you help us to have homes where character that is godly is grown and built. God, may you fill this place with homes where all people are wanted and accepted and loved when they walk into the doors of the homes of your families here. May your great hand of blessing be on our families today, God. In Jesus' name, amen. Would you, as we close, stay seated? One of my favorite songs that Josh has written and plays is Life is Beautiful. And it talks about the good and the beautiful things that God does in our families. And so just take this song in as Josh sings it as a prayer, as an anthem over your life and over your family. Thank you, Josh.